I've had these new taillight seals hanging around the shop here, I think, for 5 years, wanting to put them in my 300 SD W116. And you know, it's one of those jobs that you go, well, I got a lot of other things to do. But, you know, I decided, okay, it's time. I've got them, and you could tell just by looking down here along the sides of those taillights that the seals are pretty old in this car. So removing the taillights is not difficult on these cars. You have, you know, 7 number 8 nuts, and these they're kind of like these rectangular washers that hold the taillight into the body opening. And once you remove those, you're going to have to jig a little bit, but you can, you know, get the taillight to come out like this. And it can come out in one piece. It could also come out in 2 pieces. There's a way to remove the plastic lens first and then remove the metal bulb holder. But normally you don't need to do that, you know, if you're going to just be changing the seals. And now you can see here, looking at the seal, you can see how old and dried out and cracked it is. And a lot of times you can actually tell where they've been leaking water or moisture. And that's the primary reason. You have 2 reasons why you would want to replace seals. One would be cosmetics, and the other is moisture, water getting in the trunk. And that's real common when these things get old and dried out. So this side was fairly easy, but when we went to pull the left tail light, we're going, uh-oh. And I want to show you this because I thought this would be something you want to see if you ever run into this yourself. So when I went to remove the driver's side tail light, you know, I got pulling those nuts out. I'm like, what's this orange stuff down here? And then it dawned on me, somebody had taken RTV silicone sealant and had just run it all around the taillight seal. So you can imagine that is really difficult to get out when somebody has used silicone sealant. But, you know, I understand, you know, if the taillight's leaking and you want to get it fixed. But if you don't want to replace the seal and you need to do something to stop the water from entering the trunk, don't use silicone. Use a true butyl sealant like they use on glass that does not harden up, provides a super sticky seal, but at least when you go to take the next person that goes to take the taillight out, it's not going to take them an hour and a half trying to yank it out with all that glue in there. What we had to do in order to get the taillight out is we had to separate it. We had to come in, there's 6 nuts that hold the lens to the housing. So I opted to go ahead and get the lens off like this. Then I had something to grab a hold of. I could actually grab a hold of that. We had to take a knife and come in and cut along a couple places on this seal, and we're finally able to yank this out. Now take a look at what we're going to have to do here. We're going to have to come in here and cut all this seal out and clean this all up. It's just going to be a mess until we get it all back. You have to be real careful. You don't want to scratch the paint while you're doing that because that will introduce rust in the future. So use a rubber, use a plastic scraper or anything to keep from scratching the paint if you end up having to scrape the old seals off like I'm going to have to do now. So we'll take and get these lights cleaned up. And by the way, I want to show you this. I'm going to show you the case for maybe there is a good reason to separate them when you go to replace your seals. I first want to show you the reflector from the left side. Take a look at that. Look at these black spots here, right there and right there. So this is the quiz for today, students. Anybody want to guess what caused that? Do you imagine that the bulbs got too hot? Well, I'm looking at the bulbs and I don't see anything, that the bulbs look like they've been overheating. But if you own a diesel, that's good old diesel soot right there. And you're probably thinking, well, how in the world did that get up into my taillight lens and inside the reflector? Well, let me tell you, it happens. If you've been around diesels, particularly older diesels that smoke a lot, you'll always notice that the taillight lens is darker on the side that the exhaust comes out of. Okay, so there's a good reason. You want to, if you've got these out, go ahead and separate the reflector from the lens. So, you know, be careful. These two are plated, so you got to be a little careful when you clean them. You don't rub that reflective coating off. And then the other reason is just years and years of, you know, good old Northwest Washington moss here. But almost every reflector, I mean, you know, it's driven thousands of miles down the freeway, and particularly in rain, it's going to get this type of growth inside the lens. So you get that all cleaned out, you get the reflector cleaned off, and get these back together, and you're going to probably see an improvement in how the lenses look. So we're going to go clean these all up and put them all back together, and we'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to get them back in place and share you some final tips on reinstalling the new seals. The left taillight assembly with the new seal is installed and tightened down, and it really looks great. You look along the edges where you have the exposed part of the seal, you have that nice soft seal, no cracking. The same way along here, it fits very nicely in the groove between the body panel and the lens itself. But let me tell you, this job is not a piece of cake. I have done a lot of taillight seals in these older Mercedes-Benz, and the W116 is the most difficult. It can be time consuming and it can be very frustrating. Trying to get the new seal in there with the taillight assembly, you say, this doesn't fit. It can literally drive you crazy. So I'm not going to show you the whole process because it takes a while to get it in there, tighten the bolts and so on. But I am going to share with you a few tips that'll make this job go a lot easier for you if you ever need to do it. First off, you have to install the metal reflector first. You cannot do this, you cannot put everything together and install it as a complete unit with a new seal attached. It just won't go in. And the reason is the new seal is quite a bit more expanded than the old seal. And you're going to fight this seal because it's supposed to fit on over the lip here, but it keeps falling off. So first off, I recommend that you use a little trim sealant and just tack glue the strip on to this light reflector housing before you install it. And then number two, this is the big trick right here, is using silicone dielectric grease. No, not regular grease, not any other kind of grease, only silicone grease, because it won't harm the rubber. Is you want to put a light coating of silicone grease along the top and along the bottom, because when you start putting this into the hole, if that rubber won't slip and move, you'll never get this installed. And when you do put it into the hole, you can't start this outer edge first. You have to start these back two first, and you set it in place like this, and then you're going to look into the trunk, and because of you're going to have to compress the seal at the same time, and then move that in, and then lightly tap on that, and then eventually it'll come forward, and this forward stud will line up. Now the next trick is the sequence that you put those bolts in. You have to get them all started by hand, and then what you want to do is you want to tighten, start by snugging down the center ones, then come out to this edge, and then come out over to this side. But do not tighten this one until you have completely sucked the taillight in and have set that seal in place. Now once the reflector housing is on, then you can go ahead and install the lens and tighten those bolts down sequentially as well. You want to tighten these four down to pull the lens in before you tighten the outer two nuts right here. And don't forget these little reflector dividers here. They're kind of easy to have these fall off. So if you're cleaning the lenses and working with them, you need to make sure those get in place. They prevent the light from shining from one lens over into the other. So those are important to have too. Once you get the reflector housing with a new seal back in and installed, the hard part's over. What I'm going to do now is I'll just install the lens and tighten that down, and then I'll use a little bit of acrylic works sealant to go ahead and polish these lenses, and then I can stand back and really admire my 300 SD. So I hope you found that video helpful. If you're planning on installing your own 116 taillight seals, I'm not sure if they're still available. You'll have to contact the Mercedes Classic Center because we can no longer get these parts.